I thought $520,000 would buy me peace and quiet. Instead, I found a stranger's SUV in my driveway. When I opened the door, a man I barely tolerated told me I was just a guest in my own home. By the time my sister realized I had turned her family favor into a legal minefield, every lie she had told was already recorded and one click away from going viral. My name is Zoe Reyes. I am 34 years old, and for the past 10 years, I have been a ghost. I work in cybersecurity for Northline Dynamics, a sprawling, soulless tech conglomerate in Austin. My job, in essence, is to think like a thief, a liar, and a sociopath, so that other thieves, liars, and sociopaths cannot destroy our clients. It pays exceptionally well, and it costs exactly 100% of a person's life. For me, that cost was 80-hour weeks. It was holidays spent running threat assessments from a laptop balanced on a hotel room desk. It was relationships that withered and died because I was always on a call, always dealing with a breach, always just 5 more minutes. I poured all of it, every missed birthday, every skipped wedding, every lonely night fueled by caffeine and paranoia, into a single, high-yield investment account. That account was my escape pod. And last month, I finally pulled the ripcord. The target was a $520,000 beachfront mansion in a tiny, unincorporated town on the Florida Panhandle called Blue Water Cove. It wasn't just a house, it was a fortress. It was a physical manifestation of a boundary. It was my own private heaven, bought and paid for with a decade of my personal hell. And now, after an 18-hour, non-stop drive from Texas, I was finally here. My spine felt like a compressed spring. My eyes burned with a dry, sandy grit, and the stale air of my car tasted like old coffee and the ghost of a breakfast taco I'd eaten 12 hours ago in Mississippi. I had pushed through the night, chasing the sunrise, driven by a singular desperate need to stand in my own space and breathe air that wasn't recycled. I turned off the main highway, leaving the gas stations and fast food joints behind. The road narrowed, winding under a canopy of ancient, moss-draped oaks, before suddenly giving way to the coast. I rolled down the window. The air that hit me was thick, wet, and heavy with salt. It was the smell of life, primal and clean, and it scoured the Austin dust from my lungs. I pulled up to the gate. It was tall, wrought iron, and painted a deep ocean blue. My gate. I punched the code into the keypad, a code only I knew, and watched it swing silently open. The driveway was crushed white shells, and it crunched satisfyingly under my tires as I passed between 2 rows of towering queen palms. They swayed in the breeze, their fronds whispering a welcome. And then I saw it. My house. It wasn't a mansion in the gaudy, oversized sense. It was solid, 2 stories of concrete and glass with a gray tile roof that gleamed in the harsh afternoon sun. It was built to withstand a Category 5 hurricane. It was built to withstand anything. I felt a tremor run through my chest, a vibration that wasn't just the car's engine, it was relief. It was the feeling of a marathon runner collapsing over the finish line. I did it. I was home. I steered the car toward the 2-car garage, planning to park inside, grab my overnight bag, and then walk straight through the house and onto the beach. I didn't care about unpacking. I just wanted to put my feet in the ocean. That's when I saw the first anomaly. It was a silver minivan. It was parked directly in front of my garage, blocking the left bay. Parked at an angle, as if the driver had just abandoned it there. It was an old model, maybe 10 years old, with a visible layer of road grime and bird droppings on the windshield. A fine tremor started in my hands. This was not in the plan. My eyes did a quick, professional scan. The minivan had one of those obnoxious, stick-figure family decals peeling off the back window. Father, mother, 2 small children, and a cat. Next to it, on the bumper, was another sticker, faded and cracked. That read, "Family is everything." This was wrong. This was all wrong. My gaze snapped to the right, to the other side of the driveway. A second vehicle, a large, dirty, dark blue pickup truck. It was parked haphazardly on the edge of the manicured grass, crushing a row of hibiscus bushes. The truck bed was a disaster zone. It was overflowing with black trash bags, a bright pink child's bicycle, and several empty cardboard boxes. The kind of boxes you get from a liquor store. The kind of boxes you use when you move. This wasn't a visit. This was an occupation. My cybersecurity instincts flared, sharp and cold. The paranoia that made me so good at my job now screamed at me in the quiet of my car. I killed the engine. The sudden silence was deafening, broken only by the distant surf and the rustle of the palms. I pulled out my phone. My fingers, slick with sweat, almost fumbled the unlock code. I pulled up the text chain with my realtor. Maria, her last message, from 48 hours ago, was clear. Closing is final. Zoe, the house is 100% yours. All keys are with you. Cleaners were in yesterday. Enjoy paradise. No one was supposed to be here. No one. Not cleaners, not contractors, not neighbors. This was a private drive, a private gate, and a private home. I was the only key holder. I had locked this place up myself after the final inspection last week. I had checked every door, every window. I had set the basic alarm. A new thought, cold and sharp, cut through the confusion. Squatters. Florida had a notorious squatter problem, or worse, burglars, who had seen a new build sit empty and decided to strip it. My heart hammered against my ribs, a frantic, trapped bird. But neither of those scenarios explained the minivan. Burglars didn't bring car seats. Squatters might. But the scene didn't feel desperate. It felt entitled. That "family is everything" sticker burned in my memory. It felt less like a motto and more like a threat. I got out of my car, leaving the door open. The humidity wrapped around me like a hot, wet blanket. I scanned the property. No broken windows. No signs of forced entry from here. Just the two vehicles, silent and accusing, sitting in my driveway like they owned the place. I walked toward the house, my boots crunching on the white shells. Each step felt like walking on broken glass. My senses were on high alert. I was cataloging everything. The air smelled of salt, yes, but also something else, something greasy and stale. As I got closer to the front door, I saw it, the welcome mat, a simple choir mat I'd ordered online, reading "Go Away," a little professional humor. It was kicked aside, crumpled against the wall. And the front door was a massive slab of heavy, hurricane-proof teak. I had tested the deadbolt myself. It was state-of-the-art. Now, it was slightly ajar, just a crack, maybe 2 inches. But it was open. It was a gaping wound in my fortress, and from that wound, sound and smell bled out onto the pristine porch. The sound was a cacophony, a high-volume television, blaring the aggressively cheerful music of a children's cartoon. Underneath that, a thumping, repetitive bass line from a rap song, tinny and distorted, coming from a different source, and over both, the shriek of a woman's laughter, sharp and joyless, punctuated by the high-pitched yelling of children arguing, "Give it back." "No, it's mine." The smell hit me next. A physical blow. It was the smell of hot, old pizza, rancid popcorn butter, and something sour, like spilled milk or garbage that had sat too long. It was the smell of unkempt, careless life, and it was contaminating the clean, salt air of my new home. I stood there for a full 30 seconds, frozen. This was the point of no return. My professional training told me to get back in my car, drive to a safe location, and call the police. That was the smart play. But this wasn't a client server. This was my house. This was what I had sacrificed my entire adult life for. I was not going to be scared away from my own front door. I reached into my pocket. My fingers closed around the cool, heavy brass of my new house key. It was a solid, old-fashioned key for the high-security deadbolt. I pulled it out, gripping it in my fist, the teeth pointing outward, like a pathetic, makeshift weapon. I took a deep breath, held it, and pushed the heavy door open. The hinge was silent, well-oiled. The door swung inward, revealing my foyer. The floor was, or had been, a beautiful, hand-scraped dark wood. I had agonized over that choice for weeks. Now, it was littered with crushed snack food, goldfish crackers and pretzels, and a small, sticky-looking puddle of something purple. A plastic toy car was jammed against the baseboard. My heel, the heel of the boot I'd been wearing for 18 hours, landed directly on a pile of cracker crumbs. It made a sharp, gritty, crunching sound. The living room was just beyond the foyer. I had bought it furnished. A clean, coastal modern package, a brand-new, cream-colored leather sofa, a minimalist coffee table made of reclaimed wood, a thick, woven jute rug. The room that greeted me was a violation. My sofa was invisible, buried under a nest of tangled blankets, dirty clothes, and throw pillows from a different, cheaper house. My coffee table was a mountain of empty red and white soda cans, half-eaten pizza crusts on a cardboard box, and a scattering of wet, used paper towels. My rug was stained. On the far wall, the 75-inch television I had planned to watch quiet art films on was blasting a cartoon about screaming, brightly colored ponies, and on a side table, a small, black Bluetooth speaker was blaring a rap song so loud that the bass made the empty soda cans on the table vibrate. The chaos had a center, a large man, sprawled in the middle of my sofa, his back to me. He was wearing a stained white t-shirt and basketball shorts. He was holding a video game controller, but he wasn't playing. He seemed to be watching the cartoon. He heard the crunch. He turned, slowly, not with the sharp, panicked motion of a burglar caught in the act. He turned with the lazy, deep-seated annoyance of a man interrupted. He squinted at me, his brow furrowed in irritation, as if I were a delivery driver at the wrong address. Then, he stood up. He was tall, broad, and soft, a man who looked like he'd been formidable 20 years and 50 pounds ago. He moved to block the pathway from the foyer into the living room, planting his feet wide on my new rug. He looked me up and down. From my road-weary boots to my exhausted face, I knew him, my mind, slow and thick with fatigue and shock, finally supplied the name, Derek Grant, my sister's husband, and in that one, sickening, stomach-dropping instant, I understood everything. This wasn't a mistake. This wasn't a random crime. This was family. Derek Grant stood there, his heavy frame blocking the view of my ruined living room, and he pointed a thick finger toward my feet. He did not look guilty. He did not look apologetic. He looked annoyed, the way a father looks at a child who has just dragged mud across a freshly mopped floor. "You are tracking sand into our house," he said, his voice booming over the noise of the cartoon on the television. "Mind wiping your shoes." The words hit me with physical force. Our house. He said it with such casual, proprietary confidence that for a split second, the world tilted on its axis. I looked down at my boots. There were indeed a few grains of white sand on the dark wood, brought in from the driveway. I looked back up at his face, searching for the punchline, waiting for him to break into a nervous grin and admit this was a terrible, ill-conceived prank. He just stared at me, eyebrows raised, waiting for compliance. I opened my mouth to speak, to scream, to demand he get out of my way, but a movement in the corner of the room caught my eye. The high-backed armchair by the floor-to-ceiling window, the spot I had specifically designed for morning coffee and watching the sunrise, was occupied. Kelly turned around. My sister was sitting with her legs crossed, one foot bouncing rhythmically in the air. In her right hand, she held a large crystal wine glass, one of the Waterford glasses I had received as a bonus from a client 3 years ago and had saved for a special occasion. It was filled to the brim with a dark, rich red liquid. I recognized the bottle on the side table. It was a vintage Cabernet I had brought with me from Austin, intending to open it on my first night alone. She took a slow sip, her eyes locking with mine over the rim of the glass. She swallowed, licked a drop of wine from her lip, and smiled. It was that half-smile she had mastered in high school, the one that said she knew something I did not. "Surprise, little sis," she said. Her voice was light, airy, completely at odds with the intrusion. It was the tone she used when she showed up at my apartment unannounced to borrow a dress she would never return. I felt a constriction in my throat, a tightness that made it hard to draw breath. My brain was misfiring, struggling to reconcile the reality of my sister drinking my wine in my new home with the fact that I had told absolutely no one where this house was. "What are you doing in my house?" I managed to choke out. My voice sounded scrappier than I intended, lacking the authority I wanted to project. I took a step forward, trying to reclaim the space. Kelly laughed. It was a short, dismissive sound. She set the wine glass down on the coasterless wood of the side table, leaving a ring of condensation that made my stomach turn. "You mean our family's house?" She corrected me. Her tone was gentle, patronizing, as if she were correcting a toddler's grammar. Before I could respond, a blur of motion cut across the room. 2 children, my nephew Leo, who was 8, and my niece Mia, who was 6, came tearing out of the hallway that led to the master bedroom. They were screaming in delight, chasing each other with plastic swords. "Got you," Leo yelled, swinging the plastic weapon. Mia shrieked and dove behind the sofa, her shoes scrambling for traction. They were wearing outdoor sneakers, muddy, caked outdoor sneakers. I watched in horror as they stomped across the vintage Turkish kilim rug I had spent 6 months hunting down at auctions. I had paid $4,000 for that rug. It was delicate, antique, and irreplaceable. I watched a chunk of dried mud fall from Leo's heel and grind into the weave as he pivoted to chase his sister. That rug represented 200 hours of coding. It represented 3 weeks of sleeping under my desk during the rush to patch a security flaw for a banking client. It was not just a floor covering, it was my life, converted into currency, converted into beauty, and now it was a doormat. "Hey," I shouted, the instinct to protect my property finally overriding the shock. "Get off the rug." The kids froze. They looked at me, then looked at their mother. They didn't look scared of me. They looked confused as to why the stranger in the doorway was yelling. Kelly sighed, a long, dramatic exhalation. She picked up her wine glass again. "Zoe, don't be dramatic," she said. "They are just playing. You always were so uptight about things. It is a house, not a museum. You have to let it be lived in." I turned my gaze back to her, my hands trembling at my sides. I was not uptight. I was the owner. "How did you find me?" I asked. I demanded. "I did not give you the address. I did not give Mom the address. I told you I was going away for work." Kelly swirled the wine in her glass, watching the legs run down the side. "Oh, please," she said. "You act like you are in the witness protection program. Mom was just so excited when you told her you bought a place. She posted about it on Facebook. You know how she is." I closed my eyes for a second. Mom, of course. I had told Mom I bought a house. I had not given her the address, but I had sent her one photo. One single photo of the view from the balcony to show her the ocean. Kelly continued, sounding bored. "Mom posted the photo you sent her. She captioned it. 'So proud of my baby girl and her new palace.' I saw it. It was a nice picture. You captioned your own post on Instagram." Finally breathing again, very poetic, I opened my eyes. I had posted that, but I had stripped the metadata. There was no location tag. "You are sloppy." "Zoe." Derek chimed in. He had moved back to the sofa and was settling his bulk into the cushions, the leather creaking in protest. Kelly pointed a manicured finger at me. In the corner of that photo, just the tiniest sliver in the bottom right, there was a roofline of the neighbor's house. It is a very distinct Spanish tile, bright blue. And in the distance, there is that weird lighthouse, the one with the black stripes. I just hopped on Google Earth. It took me about 45 minutes to triangulate the lighthouse and the roof, Blue Water Cove. Then I just looked up recent sales on Zillow for the area. $520,000. Sold last week. Address right there in the public record. She smiled again, looking genuinely proud of herself. "I taught you how to use reverse image search," I whispered. "And I learned well," she said, raising her glass in a mock toast. I looked at the front door. then at the back sliding glass door that led to the pool deck. I knew I had locked everything. I was a security professional. I did not leave doors unlocked. "How did you get in?" I asked, my voice dropping to a dangerous, quiet register. "I have the only keys. The realtor gave me the only set." Derek snorted. He reached into the pocket of his basketball shorts and pulled out a piece of plastic. He flicked it onto the coffee table among the soda cans. It was a used gift card to a chain restaurant. "Your back door lock is a joke," he said, shaking his head as if disappointed in my consumer choices. Standard builder-grade deadbolt. Not even reinforced. I just slid the card in, wiggled the latch, and pop. We were inside in 30 seconds. He leaned back, crossing his arms over his chest, looking pleased with himself. "I call it being resourceful, not illegal," he added. "I saved you the cost of a locksmith if you ever lock yourself out. You should be thanking me for the security audit." My stomach churned. He had broken into my home with a piece of plastic, and now he was framing it as a favor. This was the gaslighting I had grown up with, refined and perfected into an art form. "This is breaking and entering." I said the words clearly, enunciating each syllable. "This is a felony." Derek rolled his eyes and groaned, looking at Kelly. "Here she goes," he said. Kelly set her glass down with a sharp clink. Her expression hardened. "Oh, stop it, Zoe. Stop using those big legal words. This is a family matter, not a police matter. You are not going to call the cops on your sister and your nephews. You are not that cold." She stood up and walked toward me, her floral perfume mixing with the smell of stale pizza in the air. She stopped just inside my personal space, forcing me to hold my ground or step back. I refused to step back. "We are in a tight spot." "Zoe," she said, her voice shifting into the wheedling, victimized tone I knew so well. "Derek's hours at the distribution center got cut to 20 hours a week. We can't survive on that. And then our landlord, that greedy pig, raised the rent by $400 a month. We were drowning. We were literally going to be on the street next week." She gestured around the room, her arms sweeping wide to encompass the ocean view, the high ceilings, the space, and then we find out you bought this resort. 5 bedrooms. Zoe. 5. For one person, it is obscene. You have all this space, all this money, and we are struggling to buy groceries. We just thought we could come here, stay for a few months, just until Derek finds something new, get back on our feet. It is the logical solution. A few months. The words hung in the air like toxic smoke. "You did not ask me." I said, "You broke in." "We knew you would say no," Kelly exclaimed, throwing her hands up as if my refusal was a character flaw she had to work around. "You are always so rigid. You always have to have everything your way. My schedule, my money, my space. You have always been selfish. Zoe." She took another step closer, lowering her voice to a conspiratorial whisper. "Do you remember when we were kids? When Dad lost his job? Who shared her room with you? Who let you sleep in her bed because you were scared of the thunder I did? I shared everything with you. My clothes, my friends, my space. We are family. What is mine is yours, and what is yours to share. That is how it works." I stared at her. I remembered that time differently. I remembered her complaining every night that I was breathing too loud. I remembered her charging me $1 for my allowance to use her hairdryer. I remembered her telling her friends I was her charity case, but arguing history with Kelly was a trap. She rewrote the past as easily as she breathed. I looked over her shoulder. Leo had climbed onto the kitchen island, my quartz waterfall island, and was jumping off it onto the bar stools. The leather on the stools was scratching under his shoes. Mia was now drawing on the fogged-up glass of the sliding door with a greasy finger. The house was being metabolized by them. It was being digested. If I said, "Fine, stay for tonight," they would never leave. They would establish residency. They would guilt me daily. They would turn this sanctuary into the same chaotic, loud, disrespectful mess they made of their own lives. But if I screamed, if I physically tried to push them out, Derek would overpower me. He was twice my size. And they would call Mom. They would spin a story about how I attacked them in front of the children. I felt a cold clarity wash over me. It was the same feeling I got when I identified a massive breach in a client's network. The panic vanished, replaced by a terrifyingly calm calculation. The anger was still there, but it was no longer a fire. It was a blade. I needed to know the extent of the damage. I needed to know the blast radius before I could initiate containment protocols. I took a deep breath, inhaling the scent of their intrusion, and let my shoulders drop. I unclenched my fists. I forced my face into a mask of resignation. Kelly saw the change. She smiled, triumph flashing in her eyes. She thought she had won. She thought the selfish little sister had capitulated to the guilt. "All right," I said. My voice was steady, devoid of the vibration of tears she probably expected. I looked at Derek, who was watching me with a smug smirk, then back at Kelly. "I am not going to fight you in front of the kids," I said. Kelly clapped her hands together once, a sound of pure delight. "I knew it," I told Derek. "Zoe is family. She will understand." "Oh, thank you, sis. You won't even notice we are here. We will be the best house guests." She moved to hug me, but I stepped sideways, moving toward the kitchen island. I needed space. I needed to see the battlefield clearly. I turned to face them both. "So," I said, leaning against the counter, crossing my arms, "since we are all family here, and transparency is so important, tell me exactly how long you have planned to borrow my house." Derek shrugged. "We figured 3 months, maybe 4, just until the season picks up. 3 months, in Florida. That was enough time to establish legal tenancy rights that would take a year to evict." I nodded slowly. "And since you have made yourselves so comfortable, what else have you already done in my name?" Kelly blinked. "What do you mean, I said, keeping my voice dangerously level. "You found the house. You broke in. You have been here. How long?" 2 days, 3. 3 days, Derek said. "We got here Tuesday. 3 days. And in those 3 days," I continued, "you clearly set up the internet, because the TV is streaming. You found the breaker box. You found the wine cellar. So I am asking you, plainly, what else have you done? Did you transfer the utilities? Did you open the mail?" Kelly bit her lip. Glancing at Derek, there was a hesitation there, a micro-expression of guilt that was different from the entitlement she had shown a moment ago. "Well," she said, drawing the word out, "we did want to be helpful. You know, since we are going to be here managing the place for you while you are working in Austin." "Managing the place. Go on," I said. Derek sat up straighter. "Look, Zoe, this place is huge. It's prime real estate, and you're barely going to be here. It seemed like a waste to let it sit empty when we aren't using all the rooms." A cold pit opened in my stomach. "So," Derek said, grinning like he was about to unveil a masterpiece, "we put it to work." He reached for his laptop, which was sitting on the coffee table under a pile of napkins. "We figured we could help you pay off the mortgage," he said. "Win-win." He didn't just break in. He didn't just move his family in. He had done something else, something that required a laptop and a plan. "Show me," I said. And as Derek opened the laptop, I realized that my sister hadn't just stolen my peace. She had stolen my identity. As I watched Derek fumble with the password on his laptop, the scene in front of me began to blur. The sight of my sister lounging on my sofa, sipping my wine, claiming my home as her birthright, was not just a singular event. It was the inevitable conclusion of a pattern that had been etched into our DNA since we were teenagers in Ohio. I looked at Kelly, and I did not see a 36-year-old woman. I saw a 16-year-old girl crying in the kitchen because she needed the perfect dress for the junior prom, the one that cost $300, or she simply could not show her face at school. I saw my mother, tired from a double shift at the hospital, reaching into the jar where we kept the grocery money, and I saw myself, 14 years old, sitting at the kitchen table doing homework, knowing that the graphing calculator I needed for advanced calculus was suddenly out of the budget. "You are the smart one, Zoe," my mother had said, handing the cash to a beaming Kelly. "You will figure it out. You always do." That was the mantra. Kelly was fragile. Kelly needed things to feel whole. Kelly's happiness was a delicate ecosystem that required constant financial infusion to maintain. I, on the other hand, was the cactus. I was tough. I could survive on nothing. It was a role I had accepted because I thought it was noble. When Dad died of a heart attack during my freshman year of college, the dynamic calcified into something harder, something permanent. Mom was devastated, drowning in grief and a mortgage she could barely afford. I was at the university on a full academic scholarship, working nights at a library to pay for my books and ramen. Kelly was 20. She was living at home. She was finding herself. Finding herself apparently required a new car because the old sedan Dad left behind was too embarrassing to drive to her part-time job at the boutique. Mom took out a loan. I ate peanut butter for dinner for 6 months so I would not have to ask Mom for a single cent. When I graduated and landed my first junior analyst role at a cybersecurity firm, the shift was subtle but tectonic. I was no longer just the one who did not need help. I became the one who was expected to give it. It started small. A text from Kelly. "Hey, little sis. Short on rent this month. Just a bridge loan I paid it. It was $500. I felt proud to be able to help. I felt like a successful adult. But the bridge loan never got paid back, and the bridge became a highway. When Kelly met Derek, the requests evolved. They were no longer for rent or groceries. They were for investments. Derek was always chasing a scheme. He was going to flip houses, but he needed seed money. He was going to start a dropshipping empire, but he needed inventory. He was going to become a day trader, but he needed capital. Kelly sold these requests to me not as charity, but as opportunities. You are investing in our future. Zoe, when this hits, we will pay you back double. Don't you want us to succeed? We are family. Family. That word was her skeleton key. It unlocked my wallet when logic screamed to keep it shut. But the real turning point, the moment the resentment truly began to rot my insides, happened 3 years ago. I was in Austin, finally making real money at Northline Dynamics. I was exhausted, lonely, and rich. My phone rang at 11 at night. It was Mom. She was crying so hard I could barely understand her. I thought someone had died. I pulled up FaceTime. Mom looked 10 years older than she was. Her eyes were swollen. She was sitting in her small kitchen, the one with the peeling wallpaper I had promised to replace one day. Kelly says I love you more. Mom sobbed. She says I only care about you because you have money now. She says I'm ashamed of her because she is struggling. I felt a cold fury rise in my chest. I knew exactly what had happened. Mom had probably refused to co-sign a loan for another one of Derek's trucks. She says she's going to stop bringing the grandkids over. Mom continued, wiping her nose with a paper napkin. She says if I think she is such a failure, then I do not deserve to see Leo and Mia. That was the weapon. My niece and nephew. Kelly knew that Mom's entire world revolved around those kids. They were the only thing that brought light into her life after Dad died. Kelly was holding them hostage. I fixed it. I did what I always did. I called Kelly. I did not yell. I negotiated. I transferred $2,000 to her account to help with the bills so she would not feel so stressed. I bought my mother's access to her grandchildren. The next day, Kelly brought the kids over to Mom's house. She posted a picture on Facebook of them baking cookies. The caption read, "Nothing matters more than family time. Blessed." She never mentioned the money. She never thanked me. That was when I realized the truth. I was not helping my sister. I was paying protection money. I was a human shield standing between Kelly's chaotic greed and Mom's fragile heart. If I stopped paying, Kelly would not starve. She would simply turn on Mom. She would move back into Mom's house, eat her food, drain her small retirement account, and use guilt to crush her. So I kept paying. I paid for the transmission on Derek's truck. I paid for Leo's dental work because they had let their insurance lapse. I paid for the deposit on their new apartment when they got evicted from the last one. And every time I wired the money, I told myself if I don't do this, Mom will try to. And Mom has nothing left. The climax of this extortion came 6 months ago. It was the incident that finally broke something inside me. I had just finished a 90-hour week. I was a zombie. Kelly texted me. Urgent. Need to talk. I called her. She was frantic. She said Derek had lost his job again. They were 2 months behind on rent. The landlord was threatening to lock them out by Friday. They needed $4,000 immediately. I was ready to send it. I was tired. I just wanted the problem to go away. But then, I made a mistake. I went on Instagram. Derek had posted a story an hour earlier. It was a video of him unboxing a massive 85-inch OLED television. He was laughing, boasting about the refresh rate, talking about how ready he was for football season. I stared at the screen. The television cost at least $3,000. I called Kelly back. My hands were shaking, not from fatigue, but from a rage so pure it felt like clarity. I saw the TV. Kelly, I said, I saw the TV. Derek just bought. There was a pause. Then, her voice shifted. It became sharp, defensive. He bought that with his bonus from the last job. He deserves something nice. He is depressed. Zoe. You don't understand what it is like to be under this kind of pressure. You are asking me for rent money while unboxing a home theater system. I said, the answer is no. No, she asked. Her voice went dangerously quiet. No, I said, return the TV. Pay your rent. Okay, she said. I guess we have no choice. If we get evicted on Friday, we will just have to come stay with Mom. My heart stopped. Mom's house was a 2-bedroom cottage. She had high blood pressure. She cherished her quiet routine. The idea of Derek, Kelly, and 2 high-energy children moving in with her indefinitely was a nightmare. It would kill her, literally. The stress might kill her. We will just pack up the kids and head to Mom's, Kelly continued. Driving the knife in, it will be crowded, and I know Mom's health isn't great. But family helps family, right? Unless you want to help us stay in our place. She was not asking for help. She was threatening to detonate a bomb in our mother's life if I did not pay the ransom. I closed my eyes. I hated her. In that moment, I truly hated my own sister. Fine, I whispered. I sent the money. But that night, as I sat alone in my sleek, empty apartment in Austin, staring at the transaction confirmation, I made a decision. I was done being the shield. I was done being the ATM. I opened a new bank account the next morning. I called it the Ghost Fund. I diverted every bonus, every stock dividend, every cent of overtime pay into that account. I lived on my base salary. I stopped buying designer clothes. I stopped eating out. I funneled everything into the goal. I hired a financial advisor and made him sign a non-disclosure agreement so strict he looked terrified. I told him, my family cannot know this money exists. If they find out, I will sue you into oblivion. I needed a physical barrier. I needed a place that was mine, legally and geographically separate from the toxic gravity of my family. I needed a fortress. When I found the listing for the house in Blue Water Cove, I knew it was the one. It was $520,000. It was expensive, but it was far away. It was on the ocean. It had gates. I bought it through an LLC to keep my name off the immediate public records, though I knew a determined person could eventually find the connection. I did not tell Mom the address. I did not tell her about the LLC. I just told her I bought a house. I visualized the house as a line in the sand. The plan was simple. I would move there. I would disappear. And the next time Kelly called with a crisis, the next time she threatened to drag Mom down, I would not pay. I would let them fall. I would let them face the consequences of their own lives. I would force Mom to finally set a boundary or be consumed, but I would no longer be the enabler that kept the dysfunction alive. I thought I had more time. I thought I had months to prepare for that war. I snapped back to the present, the memory of that phone call, the image of Derek's new TV, burned in my mind. I looked at Kelly. She was still smiling that smug, half-smile, thinking she had checkmated me again. She thought this was just another version of the rent crisis. She thought she had leveraged her way into my beach house just like she had leveraged her way into my wallet for a decade. She thought I was standing there calculating how much it would cost to feed them, resigned to my role as the responsible, suffering savior. She was wrong. She did not know about the ghost fund. She did not know that the Zoe standing in front of her was not the same Zoe who had wired $4,000 to keep them away from Mom, that Zoe had died the night of the TV incident. The Zoe standing here was a security contractor who neutralized threats for a living, and for the first time, I looked at my sister and I did not see family. I saw a threat. I looked at the laptop Derek was opening. I looked at the family is everything sticker on the minivan outside. I looked at the mud on my $4,000 rug. The line in the sand had been crossed. I took a slow breath. The air in the room was stale, but inside my head, everything was cold and clear. So, I said again, my voice steady, almost gentle, "Show me what you have done." I walked over to the sofa and stood behind Derek, looking down at the screen. I needed the evidence. I needed to see the depth of the betrayal before I burned the bridge, because this time, I was not going to pay the toll. This time, I was going to blow it up. I repeated the question, and this time, I let the silence stretch. "What else have you already done in my name?" The air in the living room shifted. It was no longer just the heavy, humid scent of intrusion. It was the static charge of a secret being exposed. I looked at Kelly. She was not cowering. She was not looking at the floor in shame. Instead, a small, secretive smile began to curl the corners of her mouth. It was the smile of a magician who had been waiting for the perfect moment to reveal the prestige. "Oh, Zoe, stop with the drama," Kelly said, waving her hand dismissively as if she were shooing away a fly. "You act like we are criminals. We are entrepreneurs. We are fixing your mistake." She turned to Derek and nodded. A gesture of permission. "Show her. Derek, tell her about the business plan." Derek's eyes lit up. The sullen defensiveness vanished, replaced by the manic energy of a man who believes he has just invented the wheel. He sat forward on the sofa, the leather groaning under his weight, and angled the laptop screen toward me. "You are going to love this," he said, his fingers thick and clumsy on the trackpad. "You think you are the only one who understands assets. I have been doing research." He clicked a bookmark on the browser bar. The screen refreshed, loading a page with a bright blue header and cheerful, rounded font. Staycation Wave, com. It was one of those third-tier vacation rental sites, the kind that took lower fees than the big platforms and asked fewer questions about verification. My eyes locked onto the listing in the center of the screen. Oceanfront Gem, Sleeps 8, Blue Water Cove, and there, right under the title, was the host's name, Zoe E.R. I felt a cold prickle run down the back of my neck. It was not just a listing, it was a doppelganger. How, I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. "I never created this." "How did you get into the system?" Kelly laughed softly, a sound like glass breaking in water. "You really should update your digital hygiene. Little sis," she said. "Remember that old Yahoo email address you used in college? The one you used to sign up for everything before you became Ms. Cybersecurity." I frowned. I had not used that account in a decade. Mom had the password written down in her address book. Kelly continued, looking pleased with herself. "Under Zoe, important. I guess you gave it to her years ago for emergencies. We tried to log in, but of course, we needed a verification code. But then, there was the security question." She leaned forward, her eyes dancing with malice. "What is the name of your first stuffed animal?" I froze. Snuffles. It was a raggedy gray bear I had slept with until I was 12. Kelly knew that bear. She had ripped its ear off when we were 7 during a fight over the remote control. "Snuffles," Derek said with a grin, typing the word into the air. Boom. Password reset. We were in. We created the Staycation Wave account using your email, so it looks official, legitimate owner and all that. I looked at the screen, my mind racing. They had hijacked an old identity, one I had forgotten to scrub, to impersonate me. It was sloppy, yes, but it was effective enough to bypass a basic automated check. I looked closer at the listing. The cover photo was high resolution. It was the exact photo I had posted on my private Instagram, the one of the view from the balcony, the one Kelly had used to find the house, but they had cropped it, brightened it, and added a cheesy filter that made the ocean look unnaturally turquoise. I scrolled down with my eyes, reading the description. Experience luxury living in this brand new beachfront mansion, perfect for large families and gatherings. The owner is family-oriented and flexible with check-in times and pricing. We treat our guests like kin-flexible, family-oriented. The words made my skin crawl. They were marketing my sanctuary as a bargain bin for tourists. Look at the rates, Derek said, pointing a sausage-like finger at the calendar widget. I looked. For the months of June and July, the nightly rate was set to $2,100. $2,100 a night, Derek said, emphasizing the number as if it were a lottery win. Do the math, Zoe. If we book even 10 nights a month, that is $21,000. That covers the mortgage, the insurance, and leaves a massive profit margin. He looked up at me, his face shining with sweat and greed. We figured this place is a gold mine, he said. But you are too busy working to run it. That is where we come in, Kelly chimed in, her voice smooth and rehearsed, like she was pitching a timeshare. See, we are not leeching off you. We are partners. We are going to live here year-round to manage the property. We will handle the cleaning, the guest turnover, the keys. We will be the on-site staff. She gestured around the room, ignoring the crushed soda cans and the mud on the rug. We take the master suite, obviously, because we need the space for the office, she said, glancing at the laptop as if it constituted an office. The kids get the 2 rooms down the hall. That leaves 2 guest suites for the rentals. And since we are here, we save you the management fees. We pay off our credit card debt. We save up for a down payment on our own place, and you get your mortgage paid. Everyone wins. I stared at her. The delusion was so complete, so architectural in its construction, that I almost admired it. They had not just planned a vacation, they had planned a hostile takeover, and me, I asked, where do I fit into this family business? Kelly shrugged. Well, you hate the beach, she said. You always complain about the sand and the heat, so we figured you would not be coming down much. But if you do want to visit... She pulled up a digital calendar on the screen. It was blocked out in red for weeks at a time. Just check the calendar first, she said. If there's a slot open between guests, you can book a week. We will even block it off for you so you do not have to pay. She smiled benevolently. You would let me stay in my own house, I asked, if there is a slot open? Kelly rolled her eyes. Don't be petty. Zoe, we have to prioritize the paying guests. That is how business works. You have a perfectly good apartment in Austin. You do not need 2 homes. That is just greedy. I felt a vein throb in my temple. The inversion of reality was total. In her mind, my ownership was a technicality. Her need was the law. Did you ask me, I asked? Did you ask me even once before you reset my password, impersonated me, and listed my home on the internet? Kelly let out a sharp huff of breath, annoyed that I was still hung up on consent. We knew you would say no, she snapped. You are too rigid. You are obsessed with rules and privacy and boundaries. Sometimes, family has to make decisions for everyone's good. We did this for you, Zoe. We turned your liability into an asset. Derek sensed the shift in the air, the dangerous quiet that was radiating off me. He tried to soften the blow. We were going to cut you in, he said quickly. We aren't stealing from you. We were going to give you a percentage of the bookings, maybe 10%. Once we cover our living expenses and the debts. Of course, we're not monsters. Okay, 10%. They were offering me 10% of the revenue generated by my own $500,000 asset, after they deducted their living expenses, which I assumed included high-end groceries and new electronics. I did not scream. I did not flip the table. I did not smash the laptop. Instead, I reached into my pocket and pulled out my phone. What are you doing? Derek asked, his hand hovering protectively over the keyboard. Capturing the moment, I said. I raised the phone and snapped a photo of the screen. I captured the listing title. I captured the URL. Then I reached over Derek's shoulder, ignoring his protest, and clicked on the Account Settings tab. "Hey," Derek yelled, trying to block the screen. But he was too slow. I snapped a photo of the banking information they had entered for the payouts. It was a routing number I recognized. It was the joint account they used for their bills, the one I had wired money to a dozen times. I clicked on the Profile tab. I took a picture of the email address they had used, my old email, and the phone number listed for the host, which was Derek's burner cell. "Stop it," Kelly shouted, standing up. "You are violating our privacy." I lowered the phone. I had everything. I had proof of identity theft. I had proof of intent to defraud. I had proof of unauthorized use of property. I slipped the phone back into my pocket. The cold, hard knot of anger in my chest began to unfurl into something darker, something more precise. "So," I said, my voice dropping to a register that was soft, almost tender, "this is how you plan to use my house. You were going to erase me, sell my space to strangers, and send me a tip if you felt like it." Kelly crossed her arms, lifting her chin defiantly. "We were going to save you," she said. "You are just too ungrateful to see it." "Good," I said. Kelly blinked. "Good." I looked her dead in the eyes. "I needed you to say all of that," I said, clearly. "I needed to know that this wasn't just a mistake. I needed to know it was a business plan." A flicker of unease crossed Kelly's face. She wrapped her cardigan tighter around herself, as if the temperature in the room had suddenly dropped 10 degrees. She looked at me, really looked at me, and for the first time, she didn't see the little sister she could bully. She saw something else. "Why are you looking at me like that?" she whispered. I didn't answer. I turned my head slightly, my gaze drifting past her shoulder to the built-in bookshelf against the far wall. There, nestled between a decorative piece of driftwood and a stack of faux vintage books, was a small, succulent plant in a ceramic pot. To the naked eye, it was just a piece of generic decor, but I knew better. I watched the tiny, pinprick red light hidden in the ceramic rim blink once. It was faint, invisible unless you knew exactly where to look. The camera was rolling. It had been rolling since the moment they broke in. It had caught the entry. It had caught the mud on the rug. And now, it had caught the confession. It had recorded the listing, the pricing, the admission of hacking my email, and the declaration that they intended to occupy my home indefinitely against my will. I looked back at Kelly. "You are right," I said. "Family should make decisions for everyone's good." I stepped back, creating distance between us, and I am about to make one. 3 weeks before I found my sister drinking my wine in my living room, I was sitting on the floor of my apartment in Austin, surrounded by the hum of servers and the blue light of 3 different monitors. It was 11 at night on a Tuesday. I was running a vulnerability scan for a healthcare conglomerate that had lost patient data, and my brain felt like it was packed with wet cotton. Then my phone rang. It was the ringtone I had assigned to my mother, a soft, cheerful chime that usually signaled a request for tech support or an update on her garden, but when I answered, there was no cheer. There was only the sound of jagged, wet breathing. "Mom," I asked, instinctively pulling my headset off and tossing it onto the desk. "Is everything okay?" There was a silence on the other end, the kind that is heavy with shame. Then, her voice came through, thin and trembling, sounding so much older than her 62 years. "She is here again. Zoe," Mom whispered. "She is in the driveway. She says the landlord gave them a notice. She says they have 3 days." I did not have to ask who she was. I closed my eyes and rubbed the bridge of my nose. It was the same script, played out on a loop for a decade. Kelly had a crisis. The crisis was always urgent, always someone else's fault, and always solvable with a check. "Tell her to go home, Mom," I said, fighting the exhaustion in my voice. "Tell her you cannot help." I tried. Mom said, and I heard the crack in her voice, "But she is crying. Zoe. She says the kids will be sleeping in the truck. She says Derek cannot find work because of his back. And she says if I do not help her just this 1 month, just 1 month, Zoe, then I am letting my grandchildren starve." The manipulation was so blunt, so clumsy, yet it was a shiv that found the softest part of my mother's heart every single time. How much, I asked. The words tasted like ash. I was already mentally calculating my checking account balance, figuring out if I could wire the money before midnight. $2,000, Mom whispered. I sat up straight. $2,000? That was not rent. That was rent plus a cushion, plus maybe a weekend trip, plus whatever new gadget Derek felt he deserved for enduring the hardship of unemployment. No, I said. The word hung in the air between us, foreign and sharp. I had never said it like that before. I had stalled, I had lectured, I had negotiated, but I had never delivered a flat, hard refusal. Zoe, please, Mom said, her voice rising in panic. I know you are tired of this. I know, but I cannot let them be on the street. They won't be on the street, I said, my voice rising. Derek has parents in Ohio. They have friends. They have options. The only reason they are in your driveway is because you are the path of least resistance. I cannot do it. Zoe. Mom cried out, and the sound was not just fear. It was agony. I cannot send them away because I do not have the money to give them. I froze. What do you mean? I asked slowly. Mom, Dad left you the life insurance. You have the retirement fund from the hospital. You have savings. The silence that followed was terrifying. It lasted 10 seconds, 20 seconds. I could hear the hum of her refrigerator in the background. It is gone. Zoe. The world seemed to stop spinning. What is gone? I asked, my voice barely audible. Everything. She sobbed. The dam broke. The words rushed out of her in a torrent of confession. The savings, the retirement account. It is all gone. I have been giving it to her for years. 500 here, 1,000 there. She always promised to pay it back. She always said Derek had a deal coming through. But they never paid. And now, I have nothing left. I am living on the Social Security check, and it is not enough. I sat there, gripping the phone so hard my knuckles turned white. I felt a sensation I had never experienced before. It was not just anger, it was a sense of vertigo. The ground beneath me dissolving. I had thought I was the shield. I thought my periodic bailouts were protecting Mom's nest egg. I thought that by throwing my money into the black hole of Kelly's life, I was buying Mom's security. I was wrong. I was just the secondary funding source. While I was paying for the big crises, Kelly had been bleeding Mom dry for the daily ones. My sister had taken a woman who worked double shifts for 30 years and stripped her down to the bone. Zoe, Mom asked, her voice terrified. Are you there? Please do not hate me. I did not want you to know. I did not want you to be disappointed in me. I am not disappointed in you. I said. My voice sounded strange to my own ears. It was cold. It was mechanical. It was the voice I used when I found a hacker inside a client's mainframe. This is not about money. Mom, I said, this is abuse. This is elder financial abuse, and we have been enabling it. No, it is not abuse, Mom stammered, defending her predator out of habit. She is not good with numbers. She is desperate. She is not desperate. I cut in. She is a parasite. I stood up and walked to the window of my apartment, looking out at the Austin skyline. I saw the city lights blurring. I realized in that moment that the dynamic had to die. Not just change, not just adjust. It had to die. Mom, I said, listen to me very carefully. Is she still in the driveway? Yes. Do not open the door. Do not give her money. Tell her you have $0. Tell her the bank account is empty. I cannot tell her that Mom gasped. She will scream. She will tell the neighbors I'm a bad mother. She will take the kids and I will never see them again. That was the root of it. The fear. Kelly held my niece and nephew like hostages, bargaining chips to be traded for cash. She will not take them, I said, because she needs a babysitter more than she needs a mother. I took a deep breath. A plan was forming in my mind. It was cold. It was risky. And it required a level of deceit that made me uncomfortable. But the alternative was watching my mother starve in her old age. Mom, I said, we are going to stop saving her. But No buts, I interrupted. If we keep catching her, she never hits the ground. We need to see who she really is when the safety net is gone. We need to see how far she will go. What do you mean, Mom asked. I told her about the house, not the location, not the price, but the fact that I had bought a sanctuary. And then I told her what we were going to do. I want you to post about it. I said, what on Facebook? I explained. Tomorrow. I want you to make a post. I want you to say how proud you are of me. I want you to post that photo I sent you, the one from the balcony. But you said you wanted to keep it a secret. Mom said, confused. I do. I said, that is the point. Post the photo. Make it look like you are just a proud mom. But do not tag the location. Do not say where it is. And when Kelly sees it, I continued, because we know she stalks your page to see if you have money. She is going to ask you where it is. She is going to ask if she can visit. She is going to smell a resource. And then Mom asked, and then you play dumb. I said, you tell her I did not give you the address. You tell her I'm being private. You tell her I am keeping it to myself. Why? Because, I said, my voice hardening, I want to see if she is happy for me, or if she hunts me down. I want to see if she respects a boundary, or if she views my property as her salvation. I want her to show us exactly who she is when she thinks no one is watching. There was a long silence on the line. I could hear Mom breathing, processing the idea of setting a trap for her own daughter. Zoe, she whispered, what if she does something bad? Then we will know, I said, and we will never have to wonder again if we are being too hard on her. Mom cried for another 10 minutes, but she agreed. She agreed because she was broke. She was tired, and deep down, she knew I was right. We hung up, and I immediately dialed another number. It was late, but Noah Price answered on the second ring. We had gone to college together. He had been a debate team star who turned into a shark of a litigator at Harbor Light Legal Group, specializing in property law and civil disputes. He was also the only person outside of my financial advisor who knew about the ghost fund. Zoe, he asked, his voice rough with sleep. Is everything okay? You never call this late unless someone is being indicted. I need to hire you. I said, okay, he said, the sleep vanishing from his tone instantly. For what I think my sister is about to break the law. I said, and I need to be ready when she does. I spent the next hour explaining everything. I told him about the years of handouts. I told him about Mom's drained retirement fund. I told him about the trap we were setting with the Facebook post. When I finished, Noah was silent for a moment. I could hear the scratching of a pen on paper. Zoe, he said, his voice professional and cautious. You have to be careful here. You cannot entice her to commit a crime. That is entrapment, or at least it muddies the waters legally. If you invite her to the house and then arrest her for trespassing. That is a mess. I am not inviting her. I said, I am doing the opposite. I am explicitly withholding the address. I am telling Mom to refuse to give it to her. If she comes, she has to find it herself. She has to hunt for it. Okay, Noah said, that is better. But you need to understand what you are asking for. If she finds the house, and if she breaks in, that is a criminal offense. Are you prepared to prosecute your sister? Because if you just want to scare her, a cease and desist letter is cheaper. I do not want to scare her. I said, I want to stop her. I want a paper trail so thick she can never gaslight my mother again. I want undeniable proof that she is not a victim of circumstance, but an active aggressor. Noah exhaled slowly. Then we document. He said, we do not interfere. We let her make the choices. He outlined the strategy. We would install cameras, not just security cameras, but hidden ones. We would create a digital perimeter. If she breaks in, Noah said, do not call the police immediately. Why not, I asked. Because if the police come on day one, she will claim it was a misunderstanding, he explained. She will say the door was open, or she thought she had permission. It becomes a he said, she said civil dispute. The police hate those. They will just tell her to leave and tell you to change the locks. He paused, and I could hear the grim smile in his voice. But if you wait, he said, if you let her get comfortable, If she moves in furniture, if she changes the locks, if she tries to rent it out, then it is not a misunderstanding. It is malicious intent. It is fraud. It is theft of services. That gives us leverage. That gives us the power to force a permanent settlement. It sounded cold. It sounded calculating. It sounded exactly like the kind of operation I ran at work to catch corporate spies. We need to verify she is the one doing it, Noah added. We need her voice. We need her actions on tape. Mom agreed to record her calls. I said, "Good," Noah said. And Zoe, "Yeah, if we do this, there is no going back to Sunday dinners. This scorches the earth." I thought about my mother crying over her empty bank account. I thought about the family is everything sticker on Kelly's car. The earth is already scorched. "Noah," I said, "I am just clearing the ashes." The next morning, Mom posted the photo. It was a beautiful shot of the ocean, framed by the balcony railing of my new house. The caption read, "So proud of my Zoe. She works so hard and deserves her slice of paradise." It took exactly 45 minutes for Kelly to comment. "Wow, looks expensive. Where is this? We should come break it in for her," Mom replied. As scripted, it is her private getaway. Honey, she wants some quiet time. That was the bait. 2 days later, Elaine sent me the first recording. It was a phone call. Kelly was raging. She had found the general area using Google Earth. Just as she bragged later, she was demanding the specific address. She was saying things like, "Zoe owes us this," and "Does she think she is better than us?" I listened to the recording in my office, staring at the live feed from the cameras I had just had installed in the empty house in Florida. Then, the notification came, motion detected, living room. I watched on my screen as a window pane in the back of the house shattered. I watched Derek reach through and unlock the latch. I watched them step into my sanctuary, laughing, dragging their mud across my floor. I called Noah. "They are in." I said, I could hear him typing. "I see the feed." He said, "I am logging the timestamp. Entry is forced. Intent is clear." "What now?" I asked, watching Kelly spin around in my living room, arms wide, claiming my space as her own. "Now," Noah said. "We wait. We let them dig the hole deep enough that they can never climb out. I watched them for 3 days. I watched them eat my food. I watched them create the rental listing. I watched them plan their future on my dime. And then, I got in my car and drove 18 hours to Florida." Flashback ended. I stood in the living room, looking at the hidden camera blinking in the succulent plant. I looked at Kelly, who was still trying to act like she was the one doing me a favor. She had no idea that every word she had just said, the admission of the rental scheme, the hacking of my email, the refusal to ask permission, was already stored on a secure server in Noah's office. She thought she was negotiating terms of surrender. She did not realize she had already signed the confession. The strategy meeting took place in Noah Price's corner office at Harbor Light Legal Group, a space that smelled of expensive leather and cold, hard justice. The view from the window was of the Austin skyline, steel and glass rising out of the heat, but our focus was entirely on the small, unincorporated town of Blue Water Cove, Florida. "We need to be very clear on the rules of engagement," Noah said, sliding a thick manila folder across the mahogany desk toward me. He leaned back in his chair, his fingers steepled. He looked less like my old college debate partner and more like a general preparing for a siege. "We are not setting a trap in the legal sense," he continued, his voice measured and precise. "Entrapment is when you coerce someone into committing a crime they would not otherwise commit. We are not doing that. We are not inviting her. We are not leaving the front door wide open with a neon sign that says, 'Free rent.'" He tapped the folder. "We are simply creating a vacuum," he said. "We are removing the barriers of your interference. If Kelly chooses to fill that vacuum with criminal activity, that is her choice. Our only job is to be the silent witnesses." I nodded, running my hand over the cover of the file. Inside were the weapons of my defense: a draft for a restraining order, a cease and desist letter, and a pre-filled complaint for criminal trespass and identity fraud. They were blank, waiting for the actions that would sign them. So, absolute silence. I said, absolute silence. Noah confirmed. If she texts you asking for the address, you do not answer. If she calls mom screaming, mom plays dumb. We do not give her permission, but we do not explicitly warn her away from the property itself because we are supposedly keeping the location secret. She has to hunt for it. The hunt proves the intent. I went back to my apartment that night and began the technical phase of the operation. I was a senior risk analyst. I knew how to fortify a system, but I also knew how to build a honeypot, a system designed to look vulnerable to lure an attacker in. I flew to Florida for a quick 24-hour trip, ostensibly for a final walkthrough, but in reality, to wire the house. I installed a ring of visible security cameras around the perimeter, the kind that any amateur could spot. These were the decoys. I wanted Derek to see them. I wanted him to think he was smart enough to avoid their blind spots. Then, I installed the real eyes. I placed pinhole cameras in the motion detectors. I hid a high-definition lens in the ceramic pot of a succulent on the bookshelf in the living room. I placed audio recorders in the kitchen island's overhang and the hallway smoke detector. Every device was hardwired to a backup battery and connected to a cellular uplink that bypassed the house Wi-Fi, streaming encrypted footage directly to a cloud server that only Noah and I could access. When I returned to Austin, I turned my attention to my digital footprint. I spent 6 hours locking down my life. I enabled two-factor authentication on every bank account, every investment portfolio, and every current email address. I scrubbed my social media of any geotags, but I left one door unlocked. I reactivated an old Yahoo email address I had used in college. It was the account I used to share photos with Kelly back when we were actually sisters, before we became debtor and creditor. It was the account Mom had written down in her physical address book under my name. I set the password to something strong, but I left the security question exactly as it had been 15 years ago. Question: what is the name of your first stuffed animal? Answer: Snuffles. It was a calculated risk. I was betting on Kelly's laziness. I was betting that if she decided to steal my identity to facilitate her takeover, she would try the path of least resistance first. She would not try to hack my encrypted work email. She would try the old email she knew, the one with the answer she could remember from our childhood. If that email account showed a login from an IP address in Florida, or a password reset initiated by a security question, I would have them on federal identity fraud laws. The trap was set. Now, we needed the bait. It fell to Mom to scatter the chum in the water. I spoke to her every night, coaching her, listening to her breathe through her anxiety. She was terrified. She felt like a traitor to her own child. But the pain of the empty retirement account was a fresh wound that kept her focused. Just stick to the script. Mom, I told her, you are proud. You are happy for me. But you do not know the address. A week into the operation, my phone buzzed with a file sent from Mom. It was a voice recording. I sat at my desk, put on my noise-canceling headphones, and pressed play. The recording started with the sound of a car engine running. Kelly was on Bluetooth, driving. So, Mom. Kelly's voice filled my headspace, loud and distorted by the car's background noise. I saw that picture you posted of Zoe's place. It looks huge. It is beautiful, Mom's voice replied. She sounded small, shaky, but she held her ground. She worked very hard for it. Yeah, she works hard. We get it, Kelly snapped, dismissive as always. But look, Derek and I were looking at the background, that ocean view. That is prime real estate. How many bedrooms did she say it was? I think she said 5. Mom said 5. Kelly let out a low whistle. 5 bedrooms for one person. That is just selfish. Does she even have furniture for all that I do not know? Honey, Mom said. She did not send pictures of the inside. Well, is there a pool? Kelly pressed. The kids have been dying to swim. And Derek's back has been acting up. A pool would be good therapy for him. I gritted my teeth. She was already prescribing my property as medical treatment for her husband. I think there is a pool, Mom said, but I have not been there. Come on. Mom, Kelly's voice dropped. becoming wheedling. You must know where it is. She must have sent you the address for emergencies. What if something happens to her? She said she wants privacy, Kelly, Mom said, her voice trembling slightly. She did not give me the address. She just said it has a big east-facing balcony where she took that picture. East-facing balcony, Kelly repeated, and I could practically hear the gears turning in her head. Blue Water Cove area, right? Based on the lighthouse in the back, I really do not know. Mom said, I have to go. Honey, my show is starting. The recording ended. I replayed it 3 times. I listened to the entitlement in Kelly's voice. There was not a single question about my well-being. She did not ask if I was happy. She did not ask if the move went well. She asked about the bedroom count. She asked about the pool. She asked for the coordinates. She did not see a home. She saw a resource. She saw a life raft large enough to float her entire dysfunctional family, and she was angry that I had not already invited them aboard. I forwarded the audio file to Noah with a single note. Intent established. 3 days later, the notification came. It was a Tuesday morning. I had taken the week off work, citing a family emergency, which was ironically the most truthful thing I had told my boss in years. Noah and I had driven down to Florida the day before, staying in a nondescript motel 2 towns over from Blue Water Cove. We were sitting in a coffee shop about 5 miles from the house. My laptop was open, connected to the secure cloud server. Noah was drinking an espresso, reading a newspaper like an old-school spy, but his eyes kept darting to my screen. Then, the alert flashed red at the top of my dashboard. Motion detected. Rear exterior. Here we go, I said, my heart hammering against my ribs. Noah abandoned his paper and slid his chair next to mine. I clicked the live feed. The camera mounted under the eaves of the back patio, the one disguised as a motion sensor light, provided a crisp, wide-angle view of the pool deck. A dark blue pickup truck had backed right up onto the grass, bypassing the driveway to hide behind the bulk of the house. The driver's side door opened, and Derek stepped out. He looked sweaty and agitated. He was wearing a stained t-shirt and cargo shorts. He walked up to the sliding glass door and cupped his hands against the glass, peering inside. He is checking for an alarm system, Noah murmured. Derek pulled away from the glass and tried the handle. It was locked. I had engaged the heavy-duty throw bolt before I left. He walked around to the kitchen window. He tried to slide it open, locked. Then, he did something that made Noah sit up straight. Derek went back to the truck and pulled a long, flat screwdriver from the toolbox in the bed. He returned to the sliding door. He jammed the screwdriver into the gap between the door and the frame, right near the locking mechanism. He is forcing it, Noah said, his voice devoid of emotion but fast-paced, like a sportscaster calling a play. That is destruction of property. That is breaking and entering. On the screen. Derek grunted, leaning his entire weight onto the tool. There was a sharp crack that the audio picked up clearly, the sound of the lock housing snapping inside the frame. He slid the door open. I felt a wave of nausea. Even though I had invited this, even though I wanted this evidence, watching a man physically break into my home was a visceral violation. It felt like he was breaking a bone in my body. Derek stepped inside. A moment later, he came back out and waved at the truck. The passenger door opened. Kelly stepped out. She was not wearing stealthy clothes. She was wearing a sundress and a wide-brimmed hat, as if she were arriving at a vacation rental she had legally booked. She walked up the steps to the patio, dragging a large rolling suitcase behind her. She stopped at the threshold, where Derek was holding the broken door open for her. She looked at him, threw her head back, and laughed. It was a triumphant look. She walked into my house like she was conquering a country. Then the back doors of the truck opened, and the kids spilled out, running past their parents, screaming in excitement, carrying armfuls of toys. They are moving in. I whispered. They brought luggage. They brought the kids. Noah was typing furiously on his own tablet, logging the timestamps. 10:42 a.m. Forced entry by adult male subject. 10:43 a.m. Entry by adult female subject with luggage. Intent to occupy is confirmed. He looked at me. We have the video of the break-in. We have the audio of the conspiracy from the phone call. We have the mother and the children present, which complicates immediate removal, but strengthens the narrative of long-term occupation. He paused, looking at the screen where Kelly was now visible on the interior living room camera. She was spinning around, admiring the ceiling, touching my furniture. She picked up a vase from the mantel and looked at the bottom, probably checking the price. "Zoe," Noah said softly, "we have enough. We could call the sheriff right now. We could have a patrol car there in 10 minutes. I watched Kelly open the refrigerator. I watched her frown at the emptiness, then shrug and close it. I watched Derek flop onto my sofa, putting his dirty boots up on the coffee table. If we call the sheriff now," I said, staring at the screen, "they will spin it. They will cry. They will say the door was unlocked. They will say Mom told them they could come. The sheriff will see a family with kids and tell me it is a civil matter. He will tell me to file for eviction." Noah nodded. "You are right. It is the most likely outcome." I watched Derek pull a laptop out of his bag. I watched them settle in. They were not just visiting, they were nesting. "I want to wait," I said. "Wait for what Noah asked. I want them to feel safe," I said. "I want them to think they got away with it. I want them to unpack every suitcase. I want them to fill the fridge. I want them to set up their accounts. I want them to create that rental listing they talked about on the phone." I turned to look at Noah. My eyes were dry. The nausea was gone, replaced by a cold, hard resolve. I want them to dig the hole so deep that when the ladder is pulled away, they cannot even see the light. Noah closed his laptop. "Okay," he said. "We wait. We let them hang themselves. How do you want this story to end?" "Zoe," he asked, "we have a dozen legal pathways. We can go for damages. We can go for criminal charges. We can go for a restraining order." I looked back at the screen one last time. Leo was jumping on my couch. Kelly was pouring herself a glass of water from my tap. "I don't just want to win a lawsuit. Noah," I said, "I want to reclaim my life." I stood up and gathered my things. "I want it to end with my keys working," I said, "and theirs not." The silence in the living room following my declaration was short-lived. It was shattered by the heavy, aggressive scrape of Derek's boots against the hardwood floor as he took a step toward me. The smugness that had plastered his face only moments ago was gone, replaced by a flush of angry red that started at his neck and crept up to his hairline. He did not like the fact that I had just taken photos of his laptop. He liked even less that I was looking at him not as a family member to be bullied, but as a specimen to be catalogued. "Stop taking pictures," he barked, his voice dropping an octave into that pseudo-masculine growl men use when they feel their control slipping. "This is harassment, Zoe. You do not have the right to photograph my private banking information." I held my ground, keeping my phone securely in my pocket, my hand resting over it. "It is not harassment." "Derek," I said, keeping my voice deceptively calm, "it is documentation. And considering that banking information is attached to a fraudulent listing for my property, I think the police would call it evidence." Kelly, who had been hugging herself in the sudden chill of the room, decided now was the moment to go on the offensive. She let out a sharp, incredulous laugh and shook her head, looking at the ceiling as if asking the heavens for patience. "God, look at you," she spat, her face twisting into a sneer. "This is what money does to people. It rots them from the inside out. You used to be sweet, Zoe. You used to be kind. Now you are just cold. You are standing there threatening your own brother-in-law with the police because you are so obsessed with your precious possessions." She gestured wildly at the room, knocking a coaster off the side table. "It is just a house," she screamed, her voice cracking. "It is just wood and concrete. Is it really worth destroying your family over? Is your greed worth more than us?" It was a master class in deflection. In 2 sentences, she had transformed herself from an intruder into a martyr and painted me as the villain for daring to object to the theft of my own home. I did not answer her. I was watching Derek. He was getting closer. His hands were balling into fists at his sides. He was a big man, accustomed to using his size to end arguments. He took another step, entering my personal space, towering over me. The air coming off him smelled of stale sweat and aggression. "Give me the phone, Zoe," he said, extending a hand. "I am not asking. Delete those pictures now, and we can talk about this like adults." I looked at his hand, then up at his eyes. "No," I said. Derek lunged. It wasn't a punch, but a grab. He reached out, his fingers hooking like claws, intending to snatch the phone from my pocket or perhaps grab my wrist to force compliance. I braced myself, ready to twist away. But before his fingers could graze my jacket, a voice cut through the room. It was not loud. It was not shouting. It was a baritone rumble, smooth as polished granite and just as hard. "I would not do that if I were you." Derek froze. His hand hovered in midair, inches from my arm. We all turned toward the foyer. Standing just inside the open front door was Noah Price. He looked entirely out of place in the chaotic, snack-littered living room. He was wearing a charcoal gray suit that fit him perfectly, a crisp white shirt with no tie, and holding a slim leather briefcase. He looked cool, clean, and exceptionally dangerous. He did not look like family. He looked like a consequence. "Who the hell are you?" Derek demanded, pulling his hand back but keeping his body turned toward the intruder. "How did you get in here?" Noah stepped fully into the room, his dress shoes making a sharp, authoritative click on the wood floor. He did not look at Derek. He looked at the room, scanning the mess, the broken lock on the back door visible in the distance, the mud on the rug, and finally resting his eyes on me. The door was ajar. He said, his tone conversational, "I assumed you were expecting company." He walked over to stand beside me, creating a unified front. He was not physically imposing in the way Derek was, but he radiated a kind of kinetic energy that made Derek take an involuntary half-step back. "Zoe," Kelly asked, her voice wavering. "Who is this?" I took a deep breath, enjoying the moment. "Derek, Kelly," I said, gesturing to the man beside me. "This is Noah. He is my attorney." The word hung in the air, sucking the oxygen out of the room. Attorney. It was a word that changed the physics of the conversation. It turned a family squabble into a legal event. Derek's jaw went slack. Kelly blinked rapidly, her face draining of color. Attorney Derek repeated, as if testing the word for poison. "You brought a lawyer?" Noah smiled. It was not a friendly smile. It was the smile of a shark that had just smelled blood in the water. "I am actually here as her legal counsel and witness," Noah corrected gently. "And I have to say, you have made my job incredibly easy in the last 10 minutes. He set his briefcase down on the only clean spot on the coffee table, moving a half-empty can of soda aside with the tip of his finger to make room. "What do you mean?" Kelly asked, her voice shrill. Noah turned to face them, clasping his hands in front of him. "I mean that I have been standing in the hallway for quite some time." He said, "I heard everything. I heard you admit to creating the fraudulent rental listing. I heard you admit to accessing Zoe's email without authorization. I heard you admit to occupying this property with the intent to profit from it without the owner's consent." He reached into his suit pocket and pulled out a small, sleek digital recorder. The red light on the top was glowing steady and bright. Derek's eyes widened. "You recorded us," he shouted, finding his voice again. "You can't do that. That is illegal. You cannot record people in a private residence without their permission." He looked at me, pointing a shaking finger. "This is Florida," he yelled, clearly channeling some half-remembered legal trivia from a television show. "Two-party consent. You just broke the law, buddy. I will sue you. I will sue both of you." Noah did not flinch. He did not even blink. He just tilted his head slightly to the side, looking at Derek with mild amusement. "Actually," Noah said, his voice dropping to a lecture hall cadence, "while Florida is indeed a two-party consent state for audio recording, there are exceptions. One of those exceptions is when there is no reasonable expectation of privacy." He gestured to the broken sliding door. "You are intruders in a home you do not own," he said. "That diminishes your expectation of privacy significantly, but just to be thorough." Noah pointed a long finger toward the front door, specifically at a small, discreet, but clearly visible metal plaque mounted on the wall at eye level. "Did you happen to read the signage when you entered?" Noah asked. Derek frowned. Squinting at the wall, Noah recited the text from memory, his eyes never leaving Derek's face. "Notice, this property is under 24-hour audio and video surveillance. Entry onto the premises constitutes consent to be recorded." Silence descended on the room again. Kelly looked at the sign, then at the small, succulent plant on the bookshelf where the hidden camera was blinking, then back at Noah. "And just so we are clear," Noah continued, tapping the side of his nose, "the cameras in this room, and there are several, have been live streaming to a secure cloud server since you broke in 3 days ago." He let that sink in. "We have footage of you picking the lock," Noah said. "We have footage of you hacking the email. We have audio of you discussing how to spend the money you plan to steal." Kelly made a sound like a wounded animal. She collapsed back onto the armchair, burying her face in her hands. "You brought a lawyer. Against your own sister," she sobbed, her voice muffled by her palms. "How could you do this?" "Zoe. We are family." I looked at her, huddled in the chair, playing the victim card one more time. It was exhausted. It was threadbare. "You brought a crowbar against my window." "Kelly," I said quietly, "do not talk to me about family." Noah stepped forward, taking control of the narrative before it could slide back into emotional manipulation. "Let us discuss the exposure," he said, sounding like he was discussing the weather. "Currently, you are looking at a laundry list of charges: criminal trespass, breaking and entering, computer fraud and abuse for the email hacking, identity theft for the rental listing." He ticked them off on his fingers, and that is just the criminal side. On the civil side, Zoe can sue you for property damage. I see the rug is ruined, and that door frame will need to be replaced. She can sue for the potential revenue lost. She can sue for emotional distress. Derek wiped sweat from his forehead with the back of his hand. He was looking for an exit, a loophole, anything to stop the avalanche of consequences coming his way. "Hold on," he stammered. "Hold on a second. You are throwing big words around, but you are missing something." He puffed his chest out, trying to regain some physical presence. "We have been here for 3 days, he said, pointing a finger at the floor. "We moved our stuff in. We have clothes in the closet. We have food in the fridge." He grinned, a desperate, sickly expression. "That makes us tenants," he said triumphantly. "Maybe we didn't sign a lease, but we established residency. You can't just kick us out. You have to go through the eviction process. That takes 30 days minimum, sometimes months." Kelly looked up, hope flaring in her tear-streaked face. "That is right," she cried. "We have rights. You can't just throw a family with children out on the street. The law protects tenants." I felt a spike of adrenaline. This was the nightmare scenario. I knew the laws in Florida were tricky. If they could prove they lived here, even illegally, getting them out could be a bureaucratic hellscape. I looked at Noah. Noah looked bored. He sighed, reached into his briefcase, and pulled out a single, crisp sheet of paper. It was a high-resolution color printout. He held it up for them to see. It was a still frame from the security video taken 3 days ago. It showed Derek standing at the back door. The long screwdriver jammed into the frame. His face contorted with effort as the wood splintered. The timestamp was clearly visible in the corner. "Tenancy implies a consensual agreement," Noah said, his voice sharp as a razor, or at the very least, a peaceful entry. He dropped the paper onto the coffee table. It landed on top of the pile of soda cans. "This is not tenancy," Noah said. "This is forced entry. This is burglary." He leaned forward, locking eyes with Derek. "In the state of Florida," Noah said, lowering his voice to a whisper that carried more weight than a scream, "squatter rights do not apply to intruders who break in. You are not tenants. You are criminals. And the police do not need 30 days to remove a burglar. They need about 15 minutes. Derek's face went gray. The blood drained out of him so fast I thought he might faint. The tenant defense had been his ace in the hole. The one thing he thought protected him from immediate consequences. Noah had just set it on fire. Kelly looked from the photo to Derek, then to me. She saw the wall closing in. She saw the jail time. She saw the end of her comfortable delusion. She stood up, her legs shaking. She walked over to me, reaching out a hand, her eyes wide and pleading. "Zoe, please," she whispered, "please, you cannot do this. Think about the kids. Think about Leo and Mia. Do you want them to see their parents get arrested?" I looked at her hand, the same hand that had held the wine glass, the same hand that had taken my money for a decade. "I am thinking about them," I said. "I am thinking they deserve better role models." Kelly recoiled as if I had slapped her. Her face twisted, the pleading vanishing, replaced by a vicious, cornered anger. "Mom will never forgive you for this," she hissed. It was the nuclear option, the ultimate threat. The weapon she had used to keep me in line since we were children. Mom will be sad. Mom will be disappointed. Mom will choose me. She thought it was the trump card. She thought the fear of losing my mother's love would make me back down, would make me tell Noah to put the papers away, would make me write a check and apologize for the inconvenience. She stared at me, her eyes burning with hate, waiting for me to crumble. "Never," she repeated. "She will hate you forever." I looked at my sister. I looked at the woman who had bullied, manipulated, and stolen from everyone who loved her. And for the first time in my life, standing there with my lawyer beside me and the truth on my side, I did not feel fear. I felt pity, because she did not know. She did not know about the phone call 3 weeks ago. She did not know about the recordings Elaine had sent me. She did not know that the mom she was using as a shield had been the one to hand me the sword. I looked at Noah. He gave me a barely perceptible nod. I turned back to Kelly. "You really think so?" I asked softly. I reached for my phone again. "Because I think we should ask her about your mom," Noah said, his voice dropping to a conversational volume that was somehow more terrifying than a shout. "That is interesting, because she called me herself." The sentence hung in the air, heavy and suffocating. Kelly blinked, her mouth opening slightly, but no sound came out. It was as if her brain had hit a wall. In her world, in the narrative she had constructed over 3 decades, she and Mom were a unit. They were the struggling, emotional core of the family, and I was the cold satellite orbiting them with my checkbook. The idea that Mom would speak to a lawyer, my lawyer, without Kelly's permission was a glitch in her reality. "You are lying," Kelly whispered. Her voice shook. "Mom does not even know who you are. She would never call a lawyer on me. She is terrified of lawyers." Noah did not argue. He simply looked at me and nodded. I pulled my phone from my pocket. My hand was steady. I felt a strange detachment, as if I were watching a movie of my own life. I tapped the screen, navigated to the audio files Elaine had sent me, and selected the most recent one. I turned the volume up to the maximum and pressed the speakerphone icon. The sound of static filled the room, followed by the clear, unmistakable voice of my mother. "I am tired. Zoe." Kelly flinched. It was Mom's voice, but it was not the voice Kelly was used to. It was not the wheedling, apologetic tone Mom used when she was trying to keep the peace during Sunday dinner. It was the voice of a woman who had been carrying a heavy stone for too long and had finally decided to set it down. "I am tired of being scared of my own daughter." The recording continued. "I am tired of hiding my purse when she comes over. I am tired of her using the grandchildren as leverage every time she wants money." Kelly's face went stark white. She looked at the phone in my hand as if it were a venomous snake. "Do what you have to do, Zoe," Mom's voice said, trembling but resolute. "I cannot save her anymore. If I keep saving her, I am going to drown. Please, just end it." I pressed stop. The silence that followed was absolute. It was the silence of a vacuum after an airlock has been blown. Kelly stared at me. Her eyes were wide, glassy, and filled with a horror that had nothing to do with the legal threat. This was the foundational trauma. She had lost her enabler. She had lost her hostage. For years, she had operated with the absolute certainty that no matter what she did, Mom would protect her because Mom was weak and Mom needed to be needed. But Mom had chosen, and she had not chosen Kelly. You brainwashed her, Kelly hissed, the words escaping her lips like steam. You bought her off. How much did you pay her to say that? Did you promise to pay off her house? You manipulated her. I did not answer. I did not have to. The truth was already vibrating in the air. Derek, who had been standing by the window looking like he wanted to jump through it, looked at his wife. He saw the collapse happening. He saw that the emotional blackmail strategy, the one they had relied on to pay their rent, fix their cars, and fund their lifestyle, had just been dismantled. We need to go, Derek muttered. Kelly, come on. Let's just grab the stuff and go. No, Kelly screamed. She spun around, her eyes wild. She was cornered. The legal system was coming for her. Her mother had abandoned her. Her husband was folding. She had one card left. It was the card of the modern age, the weapon of the desperate and the shameless. She reached into her pocket and pulled out her phone. She did not call the police. She did not call a lawyer. She opened Facebook. I watched, fascinated and repulsed, as she held the phone up at a high angle. She took a deep breath, rubbed her eyes aggressively with the heel of her hand until they were red and puffy, and then scrunched her face into a mask of absolute devastation. Click. She typed furiously. Her thumbs moved across the screen with the speed of a concert pianist. What are you doing? Noah asked, stepping forward to look over her shoulder. But she turned away, shielding the screen with her body. I am telling the truth, she shouted. I am telling everyone what kind of person you really are. You want to use the law, fine. I will use the world. She hit a button with a triumphant jab of her thumb. There, she said, breathing hard. Let us see how your precious reputation handles that. My pocket buzzed. Then it buzzed again. Then it began to vibrate continuously. I opened my own Facebook app. We had dozens of mutual friends, cousins, old high school classmates, neighbors in Ohio. The notification count was climbing by the second. I clicked on her profile. The post was at the top. Posted 1 minute ago. The photo was a masterpiece of manipulation. It showed Kelly, teary-eyed and fragile, with the blurred background of my living room behind her. In the corner of the frame, you could just see the back of Noah's suit, making it look like a menacing corporate figure was looming over her. The caption read, I am shaking right now. I cannot believe I am typing this. My own sister, Zoe, just kicked my family out of her mansion. We have nowhere to go. We came here because we were struggling, and she set a trap for us. She brought a lawyer to threaten me and Derek while my babies are crying in the other room. I just wanted my kids to see the ocean. I just wanted a safe place for my family. Now we are on the street. Money really changes people. Please pray for us. I read the words. They were designed to bypass logic and hit the emotional centers of the brain. Rich sister, struggling family, crying babies, homelessness. The comments were already rolling in. Oh my God. Kelly, I am so sorry Zoe did this. I always knew she was stuck up. But this is evil, heartless, absolutely heartless. Do you need a place to stay? Call me. Some people forget where they came from. Karma will get her. I felt a flash of heat in my cheeks. It was the instinctual shame of being publicly shamed. For a split second, I wanted to scream, to reply to every comment, to defend myself against the lie. Noah was reading over my shoulder. He did not look worried. He looked like a surgeon assessing a wound. Do you want to respond to that now? Or later, he asked. His voice was calm, grounding me. He was giving me a choice. He was reminding me that I was not the victim here. I was the one with the power. I looked at Kelly. She was holding her phone like a shield, watching the likes and angry reactions pile up. She looked empowered. She thought she had won the court of public opinion, and to her, that was just as good as winning in a courtroom. She thought that if she could make enough people hate me, I would back down out of embarrassment. But she had miscalculated. She was playing a game of emotion. I was in the business of data. I felt the heat in my cheeks cool. A strange, icy clarity settled over me. I realized I did not care what people from high school thought of me. I did not care about the opinions of distant cousins who only called when they needed money. I walked over to where my bag was sitting on the floor. I pulled out my laptop. What are you doing? Kelly asked. her voice wavering slightly. She had expected me to yell. She had expected me to beg her to take it down. She did not expect me to open a spreadsheet. I sat down on the arm of the sofa. I tethered the laptop to my phone's hotspot. I opened my social media accounts. I am joining the conversation, I said without looking up. I opened a new post window. I did not upload a selfie. I did not use emojis. I did not use exclamation points. I typed. Regarding my sister's post, I paused. I looked at the 3 files sitting on my desktop, the ones Noah and I had prepared for this exact scenario. We had discussed the possibility of a social media smear campaign. In my line of work, you always prepare for the leak. I dragged the first file into the upload box. It was a PDF of the property deed, clearly showing my name as the sole owner, purchased with funds from my personal trust. I dragged the second file. It was a video clip. It was 30 seconds long. It showed Derek at the back door 3 days ago. The audio was crisp. You could hear the crack of the wood as he forced the screwdriver into the frame. You could hear him say, "Got it." As the lock broke, you could see Kelly walking in behind him, laughing. I dragged the third file. It was a screenshot of the Staycation Wave listing. It showed the title, Oceanfront Gem. It showed the host name, Zoe R. It showed the email address, my old hacked account. And most damning of all, it showed the banking routing number for the payouts. I added a caption to the screenshot. Listing created without owner consent using a hacked email account. Banking information belongs to Derek and Kelly Grant. I went back to the text box. I kept it surgical. I will not share private family details, but I will share verifiable facts. 1. I did not invite my sister. They broke into my home while I was in Texas. The attached video shows the forced entry. 2. They were not seeking shelter. They were seeking profit. The attached screenshot shows the rental listing they created under my name to rent my home to strangers for $2,100 a night, with the funds routed to their personal bank account. 3. I am not evicting tenants. I am removing intruders who committed identity theft and property damage. I read it over. It was dry. It was boring. It was irrefutable. I added one final line. This is not a fight between sisters. This is about boundaries, safety, and the law. I will not be answering questions beyond this. I turned the screen toward Noah. He read it quickly, his eyes scanning the attachments. He nodded once, a sharp, decisive movement. Short, he said. Factual. No mudslinging. Perfect. I looked at Kelly one last time. She was still refreshing her feed, feeding on the sympathy of strangers. She had no idea that the narrative she was spinning was about to be shredded by the one thing she had never respected: evidence. I pressed post. I felt a physical sensation, like a weight being cut from my shoulders. It was not the adrenaline of a fight. It was the satisfaction of closing a ticket. It took less than 30 seconds. Kelly's phone dinged. Then it dinged again. She frowned, looking down at the screen. "What is this?" she muttered. Then, her eyes widened. She gasped, a sound of pure shock. "You posted the video," she screamed. "You posted the video of Derek breaking the door." Derek's head snapped up. What he yelled. "You put that on Facebook." Kelly was scrolling frantically now. The comments on her own post were starting to shift. The same people who had been sending prayers a minute ago were now seeing my post, which I had tagged her in. "Wait, is that video real?" Someone commented, "Did you guys seriously break in with a screwdriver, Kelly? Why is there a rental listing in Zoe's name with your bank account? This is not cool. This looks like fraud. The tide turned with the brutality of a tsunami. The internet hates a rich villain, but it hates a liar even more." The sympathy evaporated, replaced by the hungry judgment of a mob that realizes it has been duped. "You ruined us," Kelly shrieked, throwing her phone onto the sofa cushion. "Everyone is seeing this. My boss is on there. The PTA moms are on there." "You ruined yourself," I said calmly, closing my laptop. "You chose to make this public. You chose to lie. I just provided the citations." Derek was pacing now, hands in his hair. "Take it down. Zoe," he shouted, "take it down right now." Do you know what this does to my reputation? I am trying to start a business. Your business plan was stealing my house, I reminded him. Noah stepped in, moving between me and Derek. His voice was low, but it carried the weight of finality. The post stays up, Noah said. Unless, of course, you are ready to discuss the terms of your departure. He gestured to the table where the settlement papers were waiting. Kelly looked at her phone, which was now blowing up with notifications of a different kind: questions, accusations, screenshots of my evidence. She looked at Derek, who was pale and sweating. She looked at me. She realized, finally, that the game had changed. She was not fighting her little sister anymore. She was fighting the truth, and the truth had receipts. I did not feel triumphant. I did not feel happy. I looked at the woman who had shared a womb with me, the woman who was currently worried about her reputation while standing in a house she had burgled, and I felt nothing but a profound, exhausting relief. The bomb had gone off, the smoke was clearing, and for the first time in my life, I was the one standing tall in the wreckage. The sound of a reputation collapsing is surprisingly loud. In the confines of my living room, it sounded like a relentless, staccato pinging coming from the device in my sister's hand. Kelly stared at her phone screen, her face illuminated by the harsh blue light. Her thumbs, which had been flying across the glass only moments ago, were now frozen. She looked like someone trying to read a text message in a language she did not understand. The notifications were not stopping. They were accelerating. It was a cascade of digital judgment. Wait, is that video real? One comment popped up, visible even from where I stood. You broke in, asked another. Kelly swiped down, refreshing the page, perhaps hoping it was a glitch, hoping that the algorithm would revert to the comforting echo chamber of sympathy she had cultivated. But the algorithm is agnostic. It feeds on engagement, and scandal is the highest form of currency. She read a comment out loud, her voice barely a whisper. This is straight up criminal. She looked up at me, her eyes wide and unseeing. It was a comment from her former best friend from high school, a woman who had liked her post only 5 minutes ago. Another notification chimed, then another. People were untagging themselves from her photos. People were deleting their supportive comments, scrambling to distance themselves from the radioactive fallout of the truth. Derek, who had been pacing the length of the rug he had ruined, finally snapped. He saw the terror in his wife's eyes and realized the court of public opinion had not just adjourned, it had returned a guilty verdict. You did not have to humiliate us publicly, he roared, his face turning a dangerous shade of purple. He slammed his hand against the wall, rattling a framed print. This is family business. You did not have to drag the whole world into it. He looked at me with pure hatred, the hatred of a bully who has finally been punched back. You are enjoying this, aren't you? He spat. You think you are so superior with your lawyers and your cameras? You just wanted to embarrass us. I opened my mouth to respond, to tell him that he had humiliated himself the moment he put a screwdriver to my doorframe. But Noah beat me to it. She didn't insult you. Derek, Noah said. His voice was calm, cutting through the heat of Derek's shouting like a blade of ice. She just showed what you actually did. Noah took a step forward, positioning himself between Derek and me. If the truth is humiliating, Noah continued, that is a reflection on your actions, not her disclosure. Derek opened his mouth to argue, but the logic was a brick wall. He sputtered, looked at Kelly, looked at the phone that was still pinging with the sound of his social standing evaporating, and fell silent. Noah sensed the shift. The anger was burning out, replaced by fear. This was the moment. He walked over to the coffee table, pushed aside a half-empty bag of chips, and set his leather briefcase down with a heavy, deliberate thud. The sound echoed in the room, signaling the end of the emotional phase and the beginning of the legal one. He clicked the latches open. Snap, snap. He reached inside and pulled out a thick stack of stapled documents. He laid them on the table, smoothing the cover page with his palm. We are done with the internet, Noah said. Now we are going to deal with the reality. He looked at Kelly, then at Derek. You are currently trespassing in a residence you entered by force, he stated. You have committed identity fraud. You have attempted to lease a property you do not own. As we discussed, the police are about 10 minutes away, and based on the evidence we have just published, they will not be asking you to leave nicely. They will be arresting you." Kelly made a small, whimpering sound. "However," Noah said, raising a finger, "Zoe is offering you an alternative." He tapped the document on the table. "This is a settlement agreement. It has been drafted to resolve all civil and criminal complaints regarding this incident, provided you agree to the terms." Derek looked at the papers suspiciously. "What terms?" Noah listed them, ticking them off on his fingers, his voice devoid of negotiation. 1. You will vacate this property immediately, not tomorrow, not after dinner, now. 2. You will permanently delete the Staycation Wave listing and turn over all login credentials for the account to us so we can verify it is scrubbed. 3. You will agree to a permanent restraining order. You will not come within 500 feet of this property, Zoe's residence in Austin, or Elaine's residence in Ohio. You will not contact Zoe or Elaine by phone, email, social media, or through third parties." Kelly gasped. "Mom, we can't see Mom." Noah looked at her coldly. "Your mother requested the no-contact clause herself." He lied smoothly, or maybe it wasn't a lie. After the phone call I had heard, it felt like the truth. She needs time to recover from the financial abuse. Kelly flinched as if she had been struck. 4. Noah finished. You will sign a confession of judgment regarding the damages to the door and the rug. We will not enforce the collection immediately, but if you violate the no-contact order, we will file it and garnish your wages until every cent is paid back." He took a pen from his pocket and set it on top of the papers. "Those are the terms. And if we don't sign," Derek asked, trying to muster one last shred of defiance. Noah checked his watch. "Then I call the sheriff." He said, "I hand over the USB drive with the video footage, the audio recordings, and the bank records. I file formal charges for burglary, grand larceny, and fraud. You will be arrested tonight. You will be arraigned tomorrow, and given the value of the property involved, you are looking at felony charges." He looked at Derek dead in the eye. "I am a very good lawyer, Derek, but even I could not keep you out of prison with the evidence we have." The room went silent. The only sound was the ocean wind rattling the broken sliding door, a reminder of their crime. I watched them. I watched the reality sink in. They were looking at the end of their world. "Zoe," Kelly whispered. She stood up and walked toward me. She did not look angry anymore. She looked small. She looked like the sister I had once shared a room with, the one who used to braid my hair before she learned that manipulation was more profitable than affection. "Zoe, please," she said, her voice trembling. "You would really have your niece and nephew see their parents arrested." She pointed to the corner of the room. I followed her gaze. Leo and Mia were sitting on the bottom step of the stairs. They were not playing anymore. They were huddled together, Leo's arm around his little sister. They were wide-eyed, silent, watching the adults scream and threaten each other. They looked terrified. It was a low blow. It was the lowest blow. Kelly was using her own children as human shields, betting that my love for them was stronger than my desire for justice. And she was right. I did love them. My heart broke looking at them. Kelly saw my hesitation. She pressed the advantage. "Think about the trauma. Zoe," she pleaded. "Do you want their core memory of this house to be daddy in handcuffs? Do you want them to go into foster care tonight? Because we are in a holding cell. You can't be that cruel. You are not a monster." I felt a lump form in my throat. I looked at Leo. He looked so much like our father. For a second, the resolve wavered. I thought about just letting them stay the night. I thought about softening the terms. Then I looked at Noah. He was not looking at the kids. He was looking at me. His expression neutral, waiting for me to decide. He knew that this was the pivot point. If I yielded now, if I let the guilt win, the boundary would dissolve. They would know that no matter what they did, they could always hide behind the children. I took a deep breath. I walked past Kelly. I walked over to the stairs. I sat down on the step below Leo and Mia, bringing myself to their eye level. I ignored the mud on the floor. "Leo, Mia," I said softly. They looked at me. They were scared of me. That hurt more than anything Derek had said. I am not going to let anyone hurt you, I said, keeping my voice steady and warm. You are safe. Okay. Leo nodded slowly. Your mom and dad made a mistake, I said, a big mistake. And when adults make mistakes, there are rules. I stood up and turned back to face Kelly. I kept my position between her and her children. A physical barrier. No one lays a hand on them, I said, my voice hard as diamond. Ever. If you are arrested, I will take temporary custody until you are arraigned. I have already cleared it with social services protocols. They will not go to foster care. They will go to a hotel with me, and they will eat pizza and watch movies. Kelly's mouth fell open. I had anticipated the threat, but I continued, stepping closer to her, my voice dropping to a whisper so the kids couldn't hear the next part. They also do not get to grow up thinking this is how you treat people. I pointed at the broken door. They do not get to grow up thinking that love means letting people steal from you. They do not get to grow up thinking that family is a magic word that excuses crime. I am teaching them the lesson you refuse to learn. I looked at her, stripping away the last layer of guilt she tried to drape over me. If they see you get arrested today, Kelly, that is not my choice. That is yours. You can sign the paper, pack your bags, and drive away with them right now, or you can choose your pride, refuse to sign, and let them watch the consequences. I gestured to the table. Which experience do you want them to have? It is entirely up to you. Kelly stared at me. She looked for the crack in the armor, the wobble in the voice. She found none. Noah stepped in, sensing the moment to close. If you sign, he said gently, Zoe agrees to waive the request for immediate criminal prosecution. We will file the settlement as a civil agreement. There will be no handcuffs. There will be no police record, provided you honor the restraining order. He uncapped the pen. It is a grace period. Derek, it is a gift. Take it. Derek looked at the pen. He looked at the door. He looked at his laptop, which was still open to the incriminating rental listing. You can't do this, he muttered. But the fight was gone from his voice. You can't just cut us out of the family like that. We are blood. Legally, Noah said, sliding the paper toward him. She can decide who has access to her property and her life. Biology is not a binding contract. Derek looked at Kelly. Kelly was weeping silently now, defeat radiating off her. She nodded. A small, jerky motion. Derek picked up the pen. His hand was shaking. He signed the document with a scratchy, aggressive scrawl. He threw the pen down. Kelly walked over, picked it up, and signed her name below his. She did not look at me. Noah picked up the papers. He checked the signatures. He checked the date. He folded them neatly and placed them back in his briefcase. Click, click. He looked at his watch. It is currently 11:15, Noah said. He looked up at them. You have 60 minutes. What Derek asked. You have 60 minutes to gather your belongings, load your truck, and vacate the premises, Noah said. He pointed to the door. If you are still on this property at 12:15, I make the call. And since you have just signed an admission of guilt in this settlement, the police will not have to do much investigation. 60 minutes, Kelly shrieked. We have suitcases. We have food. We have the kids' toys everywhere. We can't pack in an hour, then you better start moving. I said. I walked over to the wall and leaned against it, crossing my arms. I am not helping you pack, I said, and neither is Noah. A heavy, suffocating silence descended on the room. It was the silence of a bomb that has been defused but is still ticking. Kelly looked at Derek. Derek looked at the pile of suitcases they had dragged in with such arrogance only 3 days ago. The kids looked at me, sensing the shift in power, sensing that the aunt they barely knew was suddenly the tallest person in the room. There was no more negotiating. There was no more, but we are family. There was no middle ground. There was only the clock on the wall, ticking away the seconds of their entitlement. Tick, tick, tick. Derek let out a strangled growl of frustration, grabbed a duffel bag, and shoved a pile of clothes into it. Let's go, he snapped at Kelly. Kelly wiped her face. She looked around the beautiful room one last time. the ocean view she had tried to steal, the luxury she felt she was owed. Then she bent down and picked up a toy car from the floor. The evacuation had begun. The 60 minutes that followed were a symphony of bitter resentment. It was the sound of a life being dismantled in a panic. Kelly and Derek moved through the house not like owners, but like looters in a riot, grabbing armfuls of clothing, toiletries, and toys, and stuffing them into duffel bags and suitcases. They argued in sharp, sibilant whispers. "This is your fault," Kelly hissed at Derek, yanking a child's t-shirt from under a sofa cushion. "You and your stupid get-rich-quick rental scheme. You pushed too hard." "My fault," Derek shot back, throwing a video game controller into a box so hard the plastic cracked. "You are the one who had to have the beachfront place. You are the one who said she was a coward and would not do anything. You said she would fold." "She did not fold," Kelly whispered, tears of rage and humiliation streaming down her face. "She brought a lawyer. Who brings a lawyer against their own family?" Derek muttered, kicking a stray soda can across the floor. I watched them from the kitchen, leaning against the counter. Noah stood by the front door, his arms crossed, a silent, immovable guard. My niece and nephew were still on the stairs, watching the chaos. Mia was crying silently, her face buried in her older brother's shoulder. Leo just stared, his face pale, his eyes tracking the frantic, angry movements of his parents. "Are we in trouble?" Leo asked, his small voice cutting through the sounds of rustling fabric. I felt a sharp, painful pang in my chest. It was the only part of this I had dreaded. I looked at their small, terrified faces, and for a second, my resolve wavered. I saw two children who did not understand deeds, or fraud, or boundaries. They only understood that their world was exploding, and the ant they barely knew was the one holding the detonator. I pushed myself off the counter, my legs feeling heavy. I walked over to them again. "You are not in trouble." "Leo," I said, my voice softer than I thought possible. "None of this is your fault. Your parents just have to leave." "Will we see you again?" he asked. I did not know how to answer that. I knelt, looking at the two of them. "You are going to be okay," I said. "I promise." I wanted to hug them. I wanted to tell them it would all be fine, but I knew it would not be. They were going on the road with two of the most toxic, irresponsible people I had ever known. I had to remind myself why I was doing this. I was not punishing them. I was stopping the cycle. I was stopping them from growing up to believe that this behavior was normal, that this was how you acquired things, that this was what love looked like. I stood up and walked away, back to my post in the kitchen. Noah, meanwhile, was on his phone, pacing quietly in the foyer. "Yes, immediately," he said, his voice low, a full rekeying of all external and internal doors. "And I want to discuss a system upgrade. We need glass break sensors and a new panel. Can you have a team here in 1 hour?" He listened, then nodded. "Excellent. Send the bill to my office." He hung up, walked back to the door, and checked his watch. 10 minutes. He announced. Derek was dragging the last heavy suitcase toward the door. It was overfilled, and a pair of jeans was trailing from the unzipped corner. He was sweating. His face was red, and his eyes were small with fury. He stopped in front of me. He looked around the room, at the ocean view, at the high ceilings, at the life he had tried to steal. Then he looked at me. "Congratulations," he said, his voice dripping with sarcastic venom. "You got your big fancy house." He leaned in closer, his voice dropping to a low growl. "Do not call us when you are alone in it. Do not call us when you realize you have got no one left but your money." It was his final shot. It was meant to be a kill shot, a prophecy of a lonely, miserable life, a final assertion that he and his chaotic family were somehow more valuable than my peace. But I did not feel the sting. The threat of loneliness was my oldest friend. I had lived with it for 10 years to buy this very moment. I looked him in the eye, my face calm. The whole point, "Derek," I said, "is that I will not have to—" His face contorted, but he had no response. The words were a shield he could not penetrate. Kelly walked up behind him, her face puffy and stained with mascara. She was holding Mia's hand. She stopped in front of me, looking for one last word, one last way to draw blood. "One day," she whispered, her voice hoarse from crying and yelling. "One day, Mom will regret siding with you. She will be old, and she will be alone, and she will realize she chose the wrong daughter, and she will hate you for it." Before I could even form a reply, before I could tell her that Mom's empty retirement account was proof of who the wrong daughter was, the front door swung open. It had been unlocked this whole time. Standing on the threshold, her hands gripping her purse so tightly her knuckles were white, was my mother, Elaine. She was trembling. She looked terrified, her eyes wide, her face pale. She must have been sitting in her car down the street, waiting, agonizing, and finally gotten the courage to walk up the drive. She took in the scene. She saw me, calm and in control. She saw Noah, a stranger in a suit, standing by the door, and she saw Kelly and Derek, surrounded by luggage, their faces a mask of guilt and defeat. Kelly froze. She stared at Mom, her last threat still hanging in the air. This was the final twist. This was the one thing Kelly had never, ever anticipated. Mom was not just a voice on a recording. Mom was here. She had driven 12 hours from Ohio. She had shown up to the battle. Mom, Kelly whispered. She let go of Mia's hand. She took a step toward Elaine, a desperate, hopeful step. She was waiting. She was waiting for Mom to see her, to see the suitcases, to see the children, and to rush in and fix it. She was waiting for Mom to turn on me, to say, "Zoe, how could you? This is your sister." Mom did not move. Elaine looked at her eldest daughter. She looked at the woman who had broken her heart and drained her bank account. "Mom, please," Kelly said, her voice breaking. Tell her she cannot do this to us. We are family." Elaine took a deep, shuddering breath. She looked past Kelly, her eyes meeting mine. I saw a universe of pain in that look. I also saw a flicker of steel I had never seen before. She looked back at Kelly. "I love you, Kelly," Mom said, her voice shaking but clear. Kelly's face flooded with relief. She started to move forward again. "But I will not let you hurt your sister anymore." The words landed. They were not loud. They were not angry. They were a simple, devastating statement of fact. They were the sound of the final cord being cut, the one that Kelly had been yanking on for her entire life, the one that had always pulled Mom back to her. Kelly stopped breathing. She stared at Mom, waiting for the rest of the sentence, waiting for the but. It never came. Elaine just stood there, holding her ground, a 62-year-old woman with nothing left but her dignity. Finally choosing it, Kelly let out a sound. It was not a cry. It was a dry, hollow gasp of disbelief. She looked at me, at Mom, at Noah. She had lost. She had lost on every front. The law, the family, the narrative. It was all gone. She did not say another word. She turned, grabbed Mia's hand, and walked out the door, brushing past her mother as if she were a stranger. Derek, his face a mask of dull surprise, grabbed the last suitcase and followed her. I watched them walk down my driveway. I watched them load the kids into the minivan. I watched them throw the last of the bags into the truck. The car doors slammed. A hollow, final sound. The engine started. One by one, the vehicles pulled out of my driveway, their tires crunching on the white shells, and then they were gone. The only sound in the house was the roar of the ocean and the whistling of the wind through the broken sliding door. Noah let out a long breath. He walked over to the coffee table and opened his briefcase one last time. "Here," he said, handing me a copy of the signed settlement. "This is your copy. It is filed. It is done." He smiled. A genuine smile this time. "You did the hard thing. Zoe, you did the right thing." A moment later, a white van pulled into the driveway. Blue water lock key. Another van, Panhandle Security Systems, pulled in right behind it. The next hour was a blur of professional, quiet activity. The locksmith changed every lock, handing me a set of new, heavy brass keys that felt solid and real in my hand. The security team replaced the broken door, installed glass break sensors on every window, and upgraded the alarm panel by the door. Noah gave me a hug, told me to call him if I needed anything, and left. The security team finished their work, showed me the new panel, and left. The locksmith packed his tools and left. Suddenly, the house was empty. It was just me and Mom. She was standing by the large living room window, looking out at the ocean, her hands clasped behind her back. I walked over and stood beside her. The room was a mess, littered with the trash and debris of the occupation, but the air felt clean. "It is quiet," Mom whispered. I looked out at the water, the sun starting to dip toward the horizon, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple. "It is ours," I said, finally, that night, after Mom had gone to sleep in one of the guest rooms. I walked out onto the balcony. The air was cool, and the salt spray felt clean on my skin. I reached into my pocket and pulled out the old house key, the original key, the one I had gripped in my fist when I first walked in, the one that Derek had rendered useless with a piece of plastic. I held it up, watching it glint in the moonlight. This was the key to the old life, the one where security was just an illusion, where a locked door meant nothing in the face of family entitlement. I pulled my arm back and threw it as hard as I could. It spun end over end, a tiny metal speck against the vastness of the dark ocean, and then it was gone, swallowed by the waves. I went back inside. I walked to the new glowing white security panel by the front door. I entered the new code, a code known only to me, to Mom, and to Noah. The panel beeped, a soft, electronic chime. System armed. I stood in the silence of my clean, quiet, and secure foyer. The ghosts were gone. The echo of Derek's voice came back to me. "This is our house." I closed my eyes and smiled. "This is my house." Thank you for listening to my story. I would love to connect with you. So please comment below and tell me where in the world you are listening from and what you thought. Remember to subscribe to Maya Revenge Stories, like this video, and give us a little extra support by hitting that hype button to help this story be heard by more people.